How do you communicate with your partner? How do you communicate in your relationships in general? How do you speak so that you are heard? That's the topic of today's Soul Sovereignty and Sexuality podcast with myself, Jessica Falcon, international soul embodiment guide and relationship expert. Because I so often hear from both men and women about their struggles in communication, feeling misunderstood, misheard, trying to speak truth, and suddenly there's an argument, there's conflict, there's anger, there's resentment, nothing is resolved. And it's so common in part because we're not taught emotional intelligence. We're not taught how to source love and worth and safety from within, which is to be sovereign. And most people are in codependent relationships or have codependent tendencies that interfere with your capacity to communicate in relationships in a healthy, productive way in which you can be heard, in which you can be seen, in which you can feel understood. And so certainly this is a topic that is much broader than the short period of time we have for an episode. But I want to start bringing a few things to your attention to highlight a couple of ways that you can start to shift the way that you communicate and also the way in which you hear your partner. Because what happens is many women in particular, but also men, are very blocked in the throat chakra, have a fear of speaking truth. And one of the fears is how the other person is going to receive it. How is this person going to receive my truth? And so it can come out convoluted or come out defensively as if you're expecting an argument. It can come out in a very emotional way instead of from your center. Now, I talked about emotional freedom a couple of episodes ago, so go back and listen to that if you want to focus on the emotional freedom aspect, because you need that in order to speak not from emotion, but from your center, from a very conscious place in which you are bringing up, say, how you feel, but you're not speaking from the emotion itself, which sets a vibration and a tone that that person is then responding to. And usually it means you're not able to fully hear the other person when they respond because you're so in your own emotion and that's all you can see. And that can create immediate tension and conflict and lack of cross connection and relationship, which is what you want. Because when we want to be heard in relationship, what we're really wanting is to be seen. What we're really wanting is connection, which is why when you feel misunderstood, it's especially disheartening. Like, I want you to understand me. I want you to know me. I want you to see me. I want you to feel me, right? That's what creates the intimacy and the connection that is fulfilling to the heart. So part of the work to being heard is for you to work on your own throat chakra, for you to do your own energetic clearing of your throat so that when you speak your truth, it's coming out as purely as possible without attachment to the other person needing to validate it, needing to give you permission, needing to agree. Because you can hear someone without agreeing with them. And this can be one of the biggest factors in creating arguments in relationships when you're trying to communicate. Because one person is saying how they feel, and the other person is saying, I hear you, but XYZ, which comes across as a disagreement. And then that person who's being disagreed with, when they're sharing how they feel, are then immediately defensive and angry. You're not understanding me. You're not hearing me. And then they stop focusing on the topic in hand, and then it becomes emotional and it just escalates. Perhaps you've experienced this. So two things. One, person A, who's sharing their experience and how they feel, has to not need the validation or the permission or the agreement. I know how I feel. I'm letting you know how I feel. Person B can recognize how somebody feels without agreeing with it. I can honor that you feel that way, but that doesn't mean I have to agree with your conclusion, for example. And making that clear, one of the ways you can do that is by sharing a reflection of what you heard. You can simply acknowledge, I hear that you are feeling really frustrated that I'm not taking out the trash as often as you are, for example. I'm hearing that you're really upset because you feel like I'm ignoring you when I pick up my phone during the middle of dinner. And those are really valid things. You have to hear them. Now, they could say, I hear that you're really frustrated that I don't take out the trash as often as you do, but perhaps it's also because I need it to be higher for me to take it out. I'm using really silly examples on purpose so that you can just see the ways in which it's important to both acknowledge the person's feeling without expecting an agreement to the conclusion or the outcome that they're trying to express. And often when somebody feels acknowledged in how they feel, that in and of itself is enough to open the door to more communication and greater cross understanding, while being able to then hear the other. Because in order to be in communication and conversation, both people have to be willing to hear each other. And so if you're expressing how you feel and the other person is then not given the same space to do so, it's not going to feel equal. It's not going to feel in alignment. And so if you're expressing your emotion, give space and time for the other person to also express their emotion. The other big thing, which I started to refer to, is that when you are speaking from your emotion itself, instead of having consciously observed it, acknowledged it on your own, gotten curious about it, and then here's what this emotion is showing me about this relationship that I would like to bring forward into the relationship so that I can be heard, so we can create connection. To speak from that acknowledgement of the emotion and your inner experience is important. But to speak from the emotion and heated state itself often comes across as throwing the emotion on the other or making them responsible for it instead of maintaining self-responsibility and then recognizing their own choice. They don't have to agree with you to love you. They don't have to agree with you to hear you. And they are still in their choice as to what they want, as to how they feel, as to how they want to respond to, say, a request you're making. A lot of women tend to control their partners in part because they don't trust them to do it on their own. They don't trust them to take the initiative. And if you can start to recognize these things within you, you're able to communicate them more clearly. A lot of people don't want to spend time getting to know themselves. All of these really old programmed beliefs that say it's selfish to think of yourself or selfish to have a self. We certainly don't live in a society that teaches people self-knowledge or sovereignty or empowerment, true empowerment. And so when you're not spending the time to know yourself and your own emotions and your own thoughts and beliefs to align them to your soul's truth, which is what I teach and guide people to do in my one-on-one work, in my group work, in my retreats and workshops. When you're not doing that inner work, you're actually not able to show up in relationship consciously without codependent tactics or needs or attachments that enable the other person to fully be on their own choice and to fully be seen and heard as well, because you're able to recognize these tendencies to control, for example, and you're able to say, okay, so I know that I'm trying to control you, and I see that the underlying reason is that I'm not trusting you. So how can we focus on building this trust? How can I start to lean into you more? How can I face my own fears? Is this you? Is this my past? Is this my parenting? Is this trauma? Let's get to the root. Let's be self-responsible so that both you and your partner can feel free to be who you are in relationships. That's the core of my expertise to create this freedom in relationships. Another really key piece around communicating in relationships that I want to address is that so often people speak from their mind, right? That's what we're told to do. It's what we're trained to do, to speak from the mind, to think in the mind, to act from the mind. The mind. Most people are living in the head, very disconnected from the body, which also disconnects you from your true power and self-knowledge, because you know the self through the body. You don't know the self through the head. You know yourself through your body, because your body contains the energy of your soul, your inner truth. And when you are speaking to another, what matters more than your words is your energy, your intention. And if you're speaking without filtering your words through your heart, they're going to be received very differently than if you breathe into and allow the words to be filtered from your heart. Because your heart always sees both the ego, me or you. Okay, ego sees one or other. It puts one person above, one person below. Sometimes you're putting the other person above you, not meaning your own needs. Sometimes you're putting yourself above them, focusing only on you and not how they feel or their choice. The heart always recognizes both as equal. And when you start to entrain your voice to be connected to your heart, which is a part of what you receive when you do the online Sacred Body Wisdom series, I will put a link to that below. And you can enter code SACRED50 to receive $50 off. So I'll put that. It's only $147 with that coupon. And this will literally shift how you show up in relationships. Because when you start to entrain your voice to come from your heart, to come from deep within you, your womb, your energetic womb, through your core, through your heart, through your throat, what you're tuning to is a vibration of love. You're attuning to a non-judgmental space. You're attuning to both people being heard and honored and seen. You're attuning to the impact of your words on the other person. This is imperative if you want true intimacy in relationships, that you are aware of the impact of your actions and your words on the other. It's really easy to focus on how the other person is impacting you or how their words are impacting you. It's very important to focus on how am I also impacting them, because the energy from which you speak is what they really hear, especially on a subconscious level. The words can sound really simple, but if they're full of rage, if they're full of resentment, if they're full of control, if they're full of demand, very differently received than if they are full of self-respect, if they are full of, I honor your choice and I'm asking you this out of love. Very different impact. And then when they hear those words, they can receive them, be in their own sovereignty, and respond, ideally from their own level of self-knowledge and self-consciousness, aware of the impact of their words. Because, which I'll do an episode on at some point, resentment in relationships builds when you're speaking to each other in ways that don't create connection, they create disconnection. Resentment creates massive disconnection in relationships, and that's unresolved emotions and all of that. That's a very different topic. But for the purpose of today, if you start to pay attention to where your words are coming from and filter them through your heart, it could take 1 second in the middle of a conversation. Place your hand on your heart, breathe into your heart. Another big aspect of this is to be really curious in conversation with another. If you don't understand something, if you are confused, if it makes you angry, if you're judging it, if you're feeling grossed out or angry, whatever your reaction is, if your reaction is anything but pure, I see you, I hear you, I honor you, and then now how am I choosing to respond to this? What is my choice in the situation, right? Freedom and love. Your response is anything but that. Get super curious. You can ask questions. Help me understand this. Tell me more. I'm shocked. I don't know. You can get curious within yourself. What am I responding to? What is triggering a sense of anger? What is my boundary here? What is my choice here? What am I feeling that's making me uncomfortable? And this curiosity piece is also going to dramatically increase your capacity to communicate in relationships. So that again, relationships are about both people. It's not about one or the other. It's about how you are resonating with, how are you connecting with the other person. So the more that you see you, the more you create the capacity to see the other, and vice versa. The more that you hear you, the greater capacity you have to hear the other, and vice versa, right? And so much of this is around you, self-knowledge, self-awareness, self-curiosity, and then filtering through the heart, being aware of the impact of your words and actions on the other, the energy with which you speak. Where is this coming from? How do I speak from my center? What do I need to see to be able to speak from my center? Be able to speak in a way that honors the other person's choice without needing them to agree, without needing them to like what I say, without needing them to do what I think they should be doing. You can have a boundary. Again, different story. But recognizing they have a choice as to whether or not to honor your boundary, because it's up to you to honor your own boundary. And I'll do an episode on energetic boundaries very soon. All right. I'd love to hear in the comments what this sparked for you, what this brought up for you. Do you have questions you want me to go deeper into on other podcast episodes? If so, put them in the comments below, particularly if you're watching on YouTube. You can send me a note. Go to the website, thepathtosovereignty.com. Sign up if you'd like to receive a free womb meditation to activate your own sexual energy. And you'll also receive weekly Soul Sovereignty Sexuality Podcasts sent directly to your inbox each week. You can also reach out to me with any questions and look at the Sacred Body Wisdom online series or Divine Activation Portal if you want this one-on-one support to create freedom in your own relationships by reclaiming your sovereignty. Lots of love. I'll see you next week.